Namo Namaha, Namaste, and welcome to everyone. Today, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to Samskriti Samvardhana and Samshodhana Pratishthanas Samskrutotsava. We are in our day 25 today, and we have with us our guest speaker for today, Dr. Jayant Bapat. So, first and foremost, welcome to Sri Jayant Bapatji, and also welcome to our President Shri Dilip Karambelkarji, the Executive President Dr. Kala Acharya, the Coordinator of SSAP Dr. Vikas Gokhale, all our eminent speakers who've been with us and time and again are present with us every day. I can see here there's Dr. Ranjana Naikaukar, Dr. Kanchan Mande, Dr. Shriram Agashe. So, welcome to all the dignitaries who are present here and all our listeners who are regularly listening to our feature. And welcome to everyone who is on Zoom, on Facebook, as well as on YouTube Live. So, with this, let me take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Jayant Bapat, our guest speaker for today. He will be speaking on a very beautiful topic, and the topic is Lajja Gauri and Ananda Nayaki, so the elusive goddess. Dr. Jayant Bapat is basically a PhD in organic chemistry. Along with that, he is also a PhD in Indology. He is also the fellow of the Royal Australian Chemical Institute. And for his PhD in Indology, which he did from Australia, he worked on the topic that is temple priests in Western India associated with the god Shiva. So this is the topic that he has been awarded the PhD for. He is currently the adjunct research fellow at Monash University Asia Institute since 1998, and he has he is an authorized Hindu priest and marriage celebrant in Australia. He has several topics that are of his interest. Just to name a few, it's Buddhism and Hindu art and iconography, public speaking, gardening, etc. Coming to the academic part, he has several publications to his credit, and he is a contributor to Hinduism in Australia, the Encyclopedia of Religion in Australia. He is currently working on the goddess of the Koli fishermen of Western India, and several journal papers on goddess Mumba Devi and Khada Devi. So I think the voice is low. Let me just switch this for a minute. Is this better now? Is the voice better?
येस थोडा कॅमेरा वरती घ्या
Yeah. So, Dr. Jan Bapat is also the co-editor of Conceiving the Goddess from Monash University Press. He is the co-author of VCE, that is Ethics and Morality, and the co-editor of Hindus and Sikhs in Australia. So you can see that we have an eminent speaker who has a very strong academic background to his credit, and he's been awarded the Caroline Chisholm Award for Community Service in Australia. He is also the recipient of Order of Australia Medal Award for service to the Hindu community in Australia and to education. So we have Dr. Jayant Bapat with us, and who's going to speak today on a very, very beautiful and interesting topic. I'm sure you're looking forward to this topic, and he will be speaking on mother goddess worship in Hinduism, the Lajja Gauri and Ananda Nayaki. So over to you, Dr. Jayant Bapat, and I'm sure the speakers are going to have a wonderful treat on this day where we have Gauri Visarjan today. So over to you, Dr. Bapat.
Thank you very much indeed. At the outset, please tell me, can you hear me well? Because I can see here that people can't hear well. Is that okay? Is my voice good enough?
येस येस
Yeah, good, wonderful. Okay. So let me start with thanking Dr. Kala Acharya, Ruchitaji, and Mr. Kambelkar for this opportunity to speak to you people. I have been in Australia for a very long time, so I don't necessarily have the right courtesies to extend to people in India, which are forgotten. But anyway, please accept my thanks. I also thank Anusha Gavankar, one of our students in Mumbai, who has the lion's share of the photographs of Lajja Gauri that she took for me. Carol Bolon, I'll mention again. She produced a wonderful monograph on Lajja Gauri, and she shared many photos with me. And some of my colleagues, Marika Vixiani, Anne Feldhaus, and Ian Mabbott, who literally dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So these are the people I'm really thankful to. And let's start with the next slide, please. Okay. We perhaps are the only religion in the world where we worship goddess as much or give her as much importance as we do to male gods. And that's, as I said, it's the only religion in the world. We, for our benefit, divided goddesses into many different roles. Saraswati, for instance, when a child starts learning the very first letters, Sri Ganesha and so on, we start with worship of Ganesh and then draw the Saraswati Yantra and tell him that she is the goddess of knowledge. All of us worship, and she's favorite of us, Lakshmi. We want as much wealth as we can. At least once a year, we worship her during Diwali. In Bengal and Orissa in a big way, but other parts of India as well, we worship Durga, the destroyer of evil. And Parvati, of course, in the form of Annapurna, comes to a home with the newly married wife, and she brings it from the image from her parents' place, and then she stays with that family forever. So we worship goddesses in very different forms. And can I have the next slide? There are goddesses also, there are some small mana goddesses, and many of them are called Shaktis of the gods. And we say that without the Shakti, the god himself is senseless. He cannot survive. So see, these are some of them here, Bhairavi, Dhumavati, Dashamavidyas, and many others that we take as Shaktis. And next slide. Next slide, yes. Parvati, of course, is very important to us, and that she is important to us in this talk as well, because Lajja Gauri is thought to be Parvati. So we call Parvati Jagadamba, the mother, Amba of the world. She is equated to Mother Earth. She is equated, Sita is equated to Mother Earth in Ramayana as well. We call Shiva and Parvati the father and mother of the world. In the words of Kalidas, Jagatah Pitaro Vande Parvati Parameshwaro. So we call her the mother of the entire world. Next slide. How do we worship Shiva? We have worshipped Shiva ever since great antiquity, hoary antiquity, in his phallic form. So that worship existed in most societies in the beginning, but that has stayed with us Hindus. There are myths that we have, many myths which explain in Hinduism the power and shape of the phallus, and it is still the most popular worship in Hinduism. In terms of iconography, it consists of the lingam and the yoni, which we call shalunka. Next slide. Here are some examples. It doesn't matter where you go in India, you'll literally see crores of Shivalingas all over the place, on the banks of rivers, in forests, everywhere. And these are the various forms of Shivalingas. You can see them worshipped and properly decorated. On the right-hand side, please note the cobra hoods and the shalunka, the shape of the yoni shape of the shalunka. That is how we worship Shiva in his union with shalunka, the yoni. The next slide. Coming to that then, did we or do we do any puja? Yes, we do. We did in a big way, but now it has gone underground. So puja of the mother in the form of yoni, the symbol of regeneration. Although it has gone underground in Brahminic Sanskrit, so when the Pandit comes to a place to chant mantras, and we have various life cycle rituals such as Garbhadha and Pusavan, where we seek the birth of a male child, and this is done by the husband touching the upasthana of the wife. But mantras being in English, we don't quite know what the priests are saying, but we do yoni puja in a big way, indirectly, directly, and so on. The act of procreation, on the other hand, is openly mentioned in detail in most Vedas and Puranas as well, many, many times. There are myths associated with Shiva, which say this all the time. And in fact, there are folk rituals where they compare woman with the earth. There's reference to this as well. So Yoni Puja does happen, but indirectly. Next slide. So, but that was practiced in a big way all over India with the left-handed tantrics, and is still done in Orissa, Bengal, and Madhya Pradesh in secret in many places. This is called Chakra Puja. If people want to, we can come back to this, but this is my photo of the 64 Yogini temple at Bhedaghat, where the Yoni Puja is shown in quite elaborately. Next slide. Okay, that brings me to the topic of today, the Lajja Gauri. In this talk of mine, I'm going to tell you first what Lajja Gauri is, some background research about her, her iconography, and her myths. Then I'll talk about my guru, the late Dr. R.C. Dhere, and his books, Lajja Gauri, and the booklet, that is Anandanayaki. I'll end my talk by looking at future areas of research in this highly neglected field. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. A typical image of Lajja Gauri is as shown. You can see the prominent things are the two lotuses in both hands. The lotus, big lotus, replaces the head, and this is an image with breasts and vagina shown, and that's why it is properly called, aptly called Kamala Shirsha, with the head of a lotus, Yoni Sthanamurti, and that is the description of the Lajja Gauri image. Next slide. While it is not practiced, once again, it is done not in a big way, in a major way, openly, but it's she is worshipped secretly, mostly by women who are desirous of having children and can't get them. So that worship is very prevalent in most of Karnataka and parts of Maharashtra. But the images of this goddess have been found all over pan-India, not just present India, but I'll come to that in a minute. There, or called in ancient Tagarpur in Maharashtra, there was a huge collection of images found there, unearthed there, in the fields of farmer called Lamture, who actually presented all of these images to the government, and there's a Ther museum, Lamture museum at Ther. It's worthwhile seeing. So this had images which are just a few centimeters tall and in large number, which probably hints of the fact that they may have been at some stage, just like Shivalinga that we have in our Devara, in our God's house. Each person or each family may have had this image there as well, but then it disappeared for some reason, which we can come to later. The other thing about Maharashtra is an important image from Vadgaon near Satara, and this has a Nandi bull next to it. That's important because that suggests that she belonged to the Shaivite pantheon. Then Andhra Pradesh, of course, but Karnataka had the biggest number of images, and large life-size images, which I shall show later on, have been there at Mahakut, Naganath Kola, and Siddhan Kola. The last, but not the very least, is a cave in Afghanistan where a small image, I'll show a picture of it later, with some Shivalingas was recently found, and there is a paper, Pakistani scholar on that. So the next slide. There have been lots of seals of Lajja Gauri as well. See, the seals on the left here is a typical Lajja Gauri seal, and that goes to show that she was quite prevalent in, and seals, of course, would be used by kings and merchants and so on. So it was quite prevalent at one stage. The image in the middle shows how small and wonderful the image can be. That's much smaller than the palm of your hand. And the one on the right-hand side is the picture of the image that was found in Afghanistan. There's some writing underneath which has not been deciphered. Next slide. Friend of mine, Carol Bolan, who produced this beautiful folio published by Munchilal Manoharilal, I think Motilal Banarasidas, and that is the art portfolio of the development of image of Lajjagauri, forms of goddess Lajjagauri in Indian art. So you can see this is a magnificent sculpture of Lajjagauri, which I'll show later on. But she, Carol Bolan, was the first one to produce a book on Lajjagauri. Next. She proposed, and she took this from others, she proposed that in 1992, that the image of Lajjagauri went from in 4 forms, from 1 to 4, one being Uttanapada Kalasha. So the feet are raised, and in the middle there's a Kalasha pot shown with feet attached on both sides. Then there was lotus headed without arms, lotus headed with arms, and fully anthropomorphic image in 4. So in the next slide, we'll start seeing those things. So, okay. This is once again a very small image from, beautiful image from there in Maharashtra. That's only just a few centimeters tall and about 3 or 4 centimeters wide. You can see on the left and right, the feet which are just stuck to this kalash in the middle. You can see the kalash quite clearly. Underneath her feet, and head of course is replaced by, and she's sitting on, all of these things are lotuses. So that shows the importance of lotus for Lajjagauri image. Top right hand side, you'll see a Buddhist kalash, and right next to it there have been Lajjagauri images found, which suggests that the Buddhists adopted Lajjagauri as well at one stage. And down below on the right hand side is the typical kalash that we use these days for kalash pujan, for any puja that we do. Next slide, thanks. Okay, this is Lajjagauri, lotus headed without arms. There is some sort of writing there, but once again, or decoration, what one doesn't know. But you can see the kalash in the middle. Once again, you can see a big lotus on top, the breast, but no arms. And the next slide. Okay. When I went to Mahakut some years ago, this image on the left hand side is sitting there in umpteen pieces scattered all over there, right next to a Shivalinga, as you can see. Unfortunately, this image must have been a very beautiful image at one stage that we can't see anymore. But you can see the lotus on top with the petals and both hands holding a lotus. Then on the right hand side in the middle is the Andhra Pradesh image, and the right hand side is the same Andhra Pradesh image as well. Both of them have arms, but lotus is on top. The next one. Okay, just sorry. The one before that is somehow we missed it. Just one second. Okay, this is the image which to me is very beautiful because it's a buried image in a cave in Karnataka near Vadami. So when I went there first thing in the morning, someone had done the worship of the image, and you can see the buried image there, and in both of these pictures, sitting right next to the Shivalinga, you can see the fresh flowers. There was incense stick burning as well on the left. So that's an example where some woman must have come and she worshipped, and this happens every day with fresh flowers. Next one. Okay. This is the image that you see. These images here are fully anthropomorphic now. So there's a head. They may have been broken, but there's a head. And these are images from Gujarat. So Gujarat images, one on the right-hand side is from a well. Gujarat is well known for wells, which are very elaborate. They are They go down into the earth and they are beautifully sculpted. So on one of these walls is this image. That's both of these, and these are 7th century images from Gujarat. And the next slide. Okay, so here you can see two more Gujarat images, and one, in fact, on the left, and it's they're very, very small but beautiful images. One on the left, you can see the arms raised, but the right one especially has this the lotus bulbs. You can see them, bent lotus bulbs, and that's something that's worth noting. And this is from Vallabhipur in Gujarat, and they are 7th century images. And the next slide. These are the ones I mentioned before, the life-size images at Alampur on the left. And while you can't see, this is a photo, both of my photos, while you can't see, there's a runnel on the left-hand side to wash away the offerings that are made to this image. And this may have all Lajjagari images are lying on their back. So that's how this image is, both images are. And obviously this may have been part of the Chakra Puja that we mentioned before. The one on the right-hand side is Naganath Kola, which forms the cover of Bolan's image, Bolan's book. And this is in Badami Museum at the moment. And the next slide. There are images which are outside this classification. This is from Kandhar in Maharashtra. No lotus, no arms, but you can clearly see the Lajjagari bit in there. So it was either partly, it was destroyed or partly made or whatever. But there are some images which do sit outside this. And the next slide. The next slide, yeah. Is there a problem? Next slide. The one after this, yep. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, thank you. As yet, there is only one inscription which is in Prakrut at Nagarjun Konda, but it does show that the image, this particular goddess, had royal patronage at some stage. We have seen her seals, we have seen tiny images which may have been parts of the home shrines, but this one particularly is from an Ikshwaku dynasty queen, 3rd century CE. And that queen commissioned this image. The queen herself described as Avidhava and Jivatputra. Both of these adjectives tend to suggest that Lajjagori, of course, was connected with fertility. So next slide, thanks. Okay. When you have an unusual image like this, there's bound to be myths as to why the image is like this. And there are 5 extant myths which deal with Lajjagori. The Englishman Fleet, who visited Mahakutu in 1881, was told that time the Mahakutu image that you saw, my photo of Mahakutu image, which is in pieces in the courtyard of Mahakutu, but this time this was sitting in a shrine, small shrine, right next to the Shiva shrine. The priest there told Fleet that this image came about because Shiva and Parvati, and remember, each and every one of these myths concerns with Shiva and Parvati, so she is definitely taken as Parvati, the Jagori. So he was told that Parvati, while they were sitting together, Parvati asked Shiva what was meant by adultery. And Shiva just smiled and said, "I'll tell you later." In the meantime, in a couple of, she discovered that all of her clothes were torn. There were big holes in them created by mice. And she was petrified of Shiva's anger. But in the meantime, a tailor came and said, "Can I do something for you?" And she says, of course, please repair these clothes. And he said, yes, I'll do that on one condition. But she said, what condition can it be? So she said, doesn't matter what, but yes, repair them. He repaired and then said, my condition is that we must sleep together. Now she was scared of, she was angry, so she consented. While they were having intercourse, Shiva took his original form, and she was so embarrassed that her head fell off. So that's the myth, that the first myth. The Marathi Devi Kosha is written by Prabhu Desai. It's a very well-known book. So the myths he collected was for Shiva and Parvati were sporting in a lake in private, and suddenly a devotee of Shiva appears. Because they both naked, Parvati was highly embarrassed. Her head fell out, and she dipped herself into the lake. Shiva ran to the temple and coalesced with the linga, and that is myth number 2. Ganesh Shastri Lele was traveled with Sardar Binsurkar sometime much later than Fleet. And when he went to Mahakota, he was told a slightly different version of the first myth, that Shiva and Parvati sitting together, Shiva wanted to test devotion, so the woolen quilt and the rats, and same thing, Shiva returns a tailor, and the myth is the same as number 1 then. All of us know about Renuka. Renuka was the wife, a very devout wife of Jamadagni, whose anger was notorious. So she used to, very early in the morning, she would go to lake or river, whatever it was, and have bathe herself. Then with the heat of her devotion, tapascharya, she would create a pot out of sand and it will stay together in spite of the water in it. She will bring it home for the husband's pujas. One day when she went there, a Gandharva was dallying with his wives. They were all naked. And for a fraction of a minute, she was stirred by desire. That was enough to destroy her heat of penance. And therefore the pot just won't sit together. So she went back home in a despondent state. Of course, with his antarnyan, Jamadagni found out what happened. He cursed her and called all of his 4 sons to come and ordered them to decapitate the mother. The first 3 refused, but Parshuram said yes, okay, and he did this straight away with a sword. Jamadagni was pleased and asked for a boon, and the Parshuram said, yes, restore my mother to what she was. Jamadagni said, I would like to, but it can't be done because her head has now fallen in a shoesmith shop, and therefore it's polluted. But I'll grant you 2 boons. That head will be worshipped as Elama and the torso as Bhudevi, or in other words, Lajagori. And the last myth appears, actually I found this on the net, that Shiva and Parvati were making love for 1,000 years, 1,000 divine years. All hell broke loose in the world. So Saptarshis decided to interfere, and they walked in this cave. Parvati was so embarrassed that she covered her face with a lotus nearby, and that is the reason for the lotus that Lajagori has. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the myths. The first and fourth tales explain the headlessness, as we saw before. The second and third explain the etymology and nudity of the image. Fifth one explains the presence of lotus flower to replace the face. What is the purpose of these myths? The main purpose of the myths is to convey the nakedness and headlessness of the image. And the next slide. The image is meant there to de-emphasize the Jagori's personality and to render anonymity. One can't get a personality without a face. That's the most important characteristic of a human. If the head's not there, then there's no personality. So the myths identify her as Parvati, as we have seen. The sculptor, he is deliberately trying to portray the universalization of the female body as a mother. And there's an attempt here at blurring the identity of the image, and that's a deliberate attempt. And the next slide. But compare this to this gaze of the female devotee, especially female devotees, in sharp contrast to the myths, because the intent of the sculpture is to interpret the image as that of a mother. Women devotees who seek child for themselves seek the image as a fellow archetypal mother. The sculptor therefore conveys the fact of giving birth, and I'll show this again to you if in discussion, but the uterus of the main images has traveled way down to show the woman in the throes of giving birth. So this, and the next slide. What do they tell us, the myths? Lajja Gauri's sole function as we can see, she is Parvati, the mother of the world, is to reproduce and sustain. And that is why precisely she has been fashioned minimally by the sculptor. She is endowed with a prominent yoni, the generative organ, and ample full breasts, the means of sustenance. Hands or feet are shown to provide human character, if you like, and the hands may hold a child later on, but they are not really necessary. And the next slide. The face is absent because it's superfluous. We don't need a face there. The feet are superfluous as well. So the replacement of the face with lotus has two purposes. One is lotus signifies auspiciousness, and it also stands for the yoni. In the Purna Kumbha depiction, the pot emphasizes fullness, perpetual pregnancy. And one may note here that the myths are all androcentric. Shiva did this, Shiva did that, etc. The image and worshippers are gynocentric. The next slide. So why lotus? What aspect of the significance attached to this flower in Hindu mythology connects it with the iconography of Lajja Gauri? Lotus, as we know, is normally associated with goddess Shri Lakshmi. The Rigvedic Shri Sukta equates her to Bhudevi, Prithvi, the earth. And in fact, Parvati is also Mother Earth. Bhudevi Prithvi is called the Mahayoni in Puranas, the origin of the universe. The Shri Sukta describes Lakshmi as lotus born, lotus handed, lotus feet, seated on a lotus, complexion like a lotus, lotus thighed, and looking like a lotus. And the next one, slide. There's close association between water, goddess Shri, and lotus. The Shri Sukta says that water makes Shri soft and moist, ardra, and billowing. This makes her fertile. So compare it to Mother Earth when it rains. The association of the generative aspect of Mother Earth has led the female Vajana being termed lotus. This clearly explains why Lajja Gauri's face has been replaced by a lotus. Lotus gives anonymity as well to the image. It is suggestive of procreation, and it shows the connection of Lajja Gauri to Prithvi, the Mother Earth. And the next. This is the typical image of Lakshmi as we see. You can see she's coming out of the lotus flower. She's holding lotuses in her hands. So that's what we just saw a few minutes ago. And the next slide. Okay, we are now going to some discussion about why this particular iconography and mythology, do they sit together? There have been few papers on Lajja Gauri by one of them by Jansen, who proposed the four-stage evolution that we already seen in Boland's work. So the Purna Kumbha, the full pot, lotus-headed without arms, with arms, and anthropomorphic. Later researchers, including Boland, Nath, Sonane, Jamkhedkar in Mumbai, and Dhere himself seem to agree. But I have a very fundamental problem with this classification, and I'll deal with that now. How do myths develop? A conjecture develops only after a certain amount of verbal corpus is generated. People start saying things. If someone sees a cow giving, putting milk on in a forest somewhere, and then we discover Shivlinga there. So the verbal corpus has got to be there. It's not the other way around. So the verbal myths must be given priority. The next slide. So in that light, which images can we call Lajja Gauri? There is no mention ever of the Kalasha in any of these myths. Therefore, such images which contain the Kalasha cannot be assumed to be the progenitors of the other forms. If Kalasha were the first form, they would have myths about womb in describing Lajagori, and they would have been wonderful myths, but there aren't any. All Lajagori myths are about the loss of head and replacement by lotus. So therefore, anonymity provided by headlessness is the most important characteristic of this image. Therefore, the fully anthropomorphic forms don't fall within the scope of these myths. Also, there have been some Lajagori images which have loin garments as well. They don't fit the bill either. Next slide, thanks. It has been suggested, and I will deal with this in detail if you want me to later on, that Lajagori is erotic, she is self-displaying and obscene, etc., notorious, indecent, etc. Now, these have been described this way by Fleet, first to start with, and Lele Shastri and others. So is she self-displaying? Not when you compare her with these present images that I'm showing here. The one on the left hand especially is drawing your attention to her vagina. The one on the right hand side does that as well. And the one on the right hand side, there are thousands of these images on European churches. They are called Sheila Nagigs, which are thought to be auspicious images for churches. Next slide. So to me, is Lajagori obscene or erotic? Maybe Brahminic elite Hinduism may have seen her as obscene because we have always insisted that women must observe all modesty. But then on the other hand, we did accept the worship of Shiva in the Linga form and had done it, venerated the Linga for thousands of years. In literature and dramatics, in Sanskrit, Marathi, Hindi, you name it, we have embraced erotica openly. And just for those who are Marathis, Natya Sangeet such as Nacha Sundari Karukopa, you know the rest, but it's highly erotic and we accepted it. Women, this is important, women who are unable to have children have venerated Lajagori for centuries. Many images have been found next to Shiva shrines, which I have shown. Some show a bull Nandi, the one near Satara, Vadgaon. With such a contextual background, one must say that Lajagori is neither erotic nor obscene. Next slide. It has been suggested that she came from Egypt in the form of Bobo, the two images on the right. This is just the head sitting straight on the legs with the vagina in the middle. But Lajagori is, and the next slide, Lajagori is far more than that. She represents a very rich culture and rich iconography, and she's definitely not Bobo. So Sankliya was one of the foremost of Indian archaeologists suggested this, and others seem to agree. But no, I don't believe in that. But I think she definitely is someone else, I mean, not Bobo. She is Indian. And this was pointed out by a great person called Stella Kramer. This is Stella should be there, Stella. Who said she is Aditi, the all-sustaining mother of the universe, giving birth to all that is. And to me, that's the best description. Others have said that she is Shakambari, the headless goddess of vegetative fertility. But once again, to me, she is far more than that. Next slide, please. So this is the Lajagori's book, Rere's book, Lajagori went through many editions. This is one of the newer editions. And the next slide. Next slide. Yep. So Dhere published his book in 1978, Lajagori. I have translated that into English, and I added the bits from the Anandnaki as well. To me, his was the best effort and first ever effort to see Lajagori in her various roles as the primordial mother, Jagadamba of all beings. He examined her in the forms of Jogalamba, Ellamma, Renuka, Matangi, many popular current goddesses, and he suggested that these are all the forms, various forms taken by Lajagori herself. He compared her to Mother Earth and showed symbolism behind various folk practices. And the next slide. For instance, the festival of Ambuachi in Assam, when earth gets menstruates and you are not supposed to sow at that time. Then the symbolism of snakes, which I can deal with later on if we have questions in that. Symbolism of various field pots, Purna Kumbha, etc. Various forms taken by Aditi, the Vedic goddess. The partners taken by Mother Earth for procreation and Mother Earth Jagori. In Marathi, in Maharashtra, of course, Jyotiba, Subramanya in both Maharashtra and all of South India, both worshipped as cobras, once again, the phallic symbols. He looked at Lajagori shrines and myths, and he suggested that she is like Mother Earth, perpetually pregnant, but forever virgin. So next slide. In his words, and this is my translation, but that's the best description of Lajagori. Lanjika, Lajagori is the Mahayuni that creates the whole universe. She is the beginning of it all. She begets all things, living and non-living. It's the milk from a breast that keeps all the living things going. Firstly, she is the goddess of creation of the world. It follows that she is also the goddess of sustenance, naturally. Her yoni signifies creation and a breast sustenance. It's no wonder, he says, that only these two require prominence in an iconography. Next slide. But it's amazing how people in two different parts of the world can think of the same thing. Dheri didn't know. He was actually embarrassed when he started doing research on Lajagori because he was looking at mother's womb and that was embarrassing. But he said, look, I'm taking the position of a child, your child, and I want to investigate the mystery of the womb. So therefore he was going towards the mystery of the womb. But this parallel development, the womb cave, the last one here, and in the next slide you'll see more. So that's the worship of the genetrix in the womb form. This is a Thracian womb cave in Bulgaria, a recent find. And you can see here the vagina-like shape, but on the extreme right-hand side, and in the middle, you can see the steps that I go to for people to go in there. In the middle, on the right-hand side, is an altar, and there's a hole on top through which sunlight comes in the form of phallus, and that combines with the altar to then, of course, the fecundate the vagina. So the next one. This is a great tourist attraction, by the way. This amazing Thracian megalith is called the Womb Cave or the Vagina Cave, located near the village of Nenkova, sculpted 9th to 10th century BC. And look at Dere, Dere didn't know any of this, but the similar thinking. This was discovered in 2001. The temple is shaped like the opening of a vagina. There's an altar at the end, and which symbolizes the womb itself. And next slide. Next slide. Okay. So at midday, the sun appears and it comes in a phallus shape on this altar, and that is where they would have been conducting their rites, whatever they were, that far ago. So this is the womb altar, and only during some months of the year, the sun is at an angle, so it can actually reach the altar. And the next slide, thanks. Next slide. Yep. Okay. Dere was told that in Karnataka, near the village of Ramtirtha, near the village of Atni at Ramtirtha, there is a very unusual sculpture of Lajagori, and he was immediately attracted. He couldn't make it till the very last, and he couldn't really do much work in that. He produced a small booklet, and I have translated the chapter 4 of this booklet and combined with the Lajagori book. And so that is where this particular shrine is. You can see, especially on the right-hand side, the rock has been just broken and sculpted to make this hole into which the image of the Anandanayaki sits. On the left-hand side, you can see a passage, and he was told that this temple is right behind Shiva shrine at Ramtirtha, and the priest told him that this is where Shiva came from the back passage to meet his consort Lajagori, the Anandanayaki. And I quoted here, it's slightly long, but it's worthwhile pondering upon. Dhere said, at this point, the image in front of me became misty and went out of focus. I felt that the carved out cave itself was the goddess's image, not the image in there. The image in there is just a plain image of Durga. So that cave itself is the womb, the primordial form of Anandanayaki. I felt my body disappear and it became a lotus, a fetus in the womb of the great mother. Isn't it fantastic, the description? But he wasn't happy, he wasn't satisfied. How come this Durga image came in here in place of the womb that he was thinking of? Next slide, please. He did find this just a kilometer from where this place is, in a very small, pretty ordinary looking shrine under a banyan tree. It is called Vada Khalchi Lakshmi. But you can see the image on the right hand side. Isn't that fabulous? That in fact is nothing but the womb with lotus bud coming from the sides. And he didn't have much time at all later on. This was during his late years. He would have liked to go there and find out how this image traveled from Ramtirtha to there, and the Durga came there instead. No one knows. But that is Anandanayaki image. It's amazing, isn't it, that it's worshipped by very few people do come to worship it, but it's worshipped by women who are desirous of having children and can't get any. So that's identical to what we have seen with Lajjagari. So next slide. Okay, so I come to just a picture of the book that Monash University has published and that has just come out a few months ago. The Lajjagari and Andanayaki, a new light from the nature and worship of Adimata, the primordial mother. So that book would be available in India, I guess. So if people are interested, I can direct them to where to get it from. And the next slide. I did say before that this is a highly neglected topic. There are many things in the Dhere's book which need going further, which needs 10, 20 PhDs to come and work on this field. But I'm sitting here thousands of kilometers away in Australia, and I'm also getting slightly old. So it's someone else who can take this in India. That would be wonderful. Some of these topics, the name Lajjagari. Lajjagari is a recent name, but there are other images that have been there, and Lajjagari name was given for a particular reason. But what was this called? What were the names given to this particular goddess from ancient times to the present? No one knows. Evolution of the image, I have cast doubt on the current evolution of the image. Maybe that's right, but I see a difficulty with it. So someone must work on this to find out whether there have been two or three parallel things happening at the same time, and one is Lajjagari, the others are some others. The use of the image, I've hinted at Chakra Puja, that may have happened. Mahakut was known to be a center for left-handed tantrics, so that could have happened. All the information about these kinds of things must sit in the Veerashaiva mutts. Veerashaivas took over the Gaurava mutts in Karnataka, and Gauravas, they are the preceptors to the kings. They are priests to the kings. And all of this stuff would be in Hare Kannada, of course, which is very difficult to read. Not that I can read Kannada, but anyway, so this is where the information could be, but that needs to be found out. Did left-handed tantrics use this as Chakra Puja? And therefore there could be more information on in Mahakut, in the pothis that they have. Dere also had this wonderful thing about goddess Matangi. He suggested Matangi is in fact Lajjagari and others as well, Yellama, so on. And his two of his chapters are Matangi and Matangi Patta. He suggests, he actually did go to one place, but Matangi is the goddess of Mahars who have now converted en masse to Buddhism. but their gods and goddesses were the sky and earth, and they had this type of imagery in their poetry. And it's amazing how a neglected group like that comes out with such fundamental imagery, and that needs to be taken further. So that's something that one should think about. And the next slide. Next slide, thanks. Okay, so that more or less concludes my talk. But in the next, sorry, can I have the slide again? Yes. The US commercial gurus in the US don't waste their time when they have a topic like this, which could be of immediate interest to people who want to follow some kind of tantrism. This image I've got on the net, it's available, life-size image available with Sri Yantra and the lot. So it's for worship and whatever they want to do with it. But with that, I think I conclude my talk. And thank you very much for the opportunity once again. I'm very happy to answer questions. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bapat. This was really beautiful, an area which is not really spoken much of, and thank you so much for bringing to light
I can't hear you well.
this
I can't
topic
hear you
for
well.
our. Is that okay now? Is it? Am
Yeah,
I
that's
audible
better.
now?
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you so much, Dr. Bapat, for this wonderful exposition and bringing to light this topic which not many people have worked on, and also for inspiring people to take it up in future. I'm sure there will be people who will want to work on this. I request Dr. Kala Acharya ma'am to give the concluding remarks before we take a few questions. So over to you, Dr. Kala Acharya. Dr. Kala Acharya.
Namaste, Dr. Jayant Bapat.
Namaskar.
Thank you very much for this wonderful exposition. You were wondering about the name Lajja Gauri, so just I want to suggest, this is just a suggestion, that this is a compounded word, Lajja Eva Gauri. If we can, if we can resolve it like a karma dharaya, that Lajja comes from the root Lajja, to blush, and the organ which is the cause of blushing for a woman, that organ itself became a Gauri, a deity, and that's why maybe that this may be one of the reasons why it can be called as Lajja Gauri. Now
Thank
we
you.
have to think. Huh?
But you finish it and I'll answer that. Yes.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that because all you see, upastha is also one of the karmendriya. All karmendriyas can be seen, hand, foot, etc. And the very functions of those are mentioned in our shastras. Whereas for upastha, it is joy as the vishaya, that from which joy can be taken, and that's why that. But that upastha has to be covered because it is a reproductive organ, and even in the Vedas, whenever all the female things, when this is particularly a female organ, all the female organs or those things which just symbolize the female organs or feminine aspect are always to be covered. Even the Vedi of the Yajna, the altar, very much. She is supposed to be a woman, and that's why she is to be covered by grass, sacred grass. The other thing I wanted to say is that this Yoni Puja was very much, the trace can be found in the Vedas, because in the Atharva Veda, when the bridegroom takes the hand of the bride, at that time he says, Kamodata Kamaha Pratigruhita Kamam Samudram Avisha Kame Natvam Pratigrunnami Kama Itatte Vrishtirasi Deustva Dadatu Prithvim Pratigrunnatu. That Kama is the giver, Kama is the receiver. Enter the ocean of Kama, and I receive you for Kama. And in this very verse, just not only the Kama, that is the sexual joy, is is mentioned, but at that time the bridegroom is compared with Deus, the heaven, and the bride is compared with earth. And that's why maybe when you said later in your speech that Ranchi Dhere has said that it can be the symbol of earth, it can be like that, because one more reason is that the Apastama Mantra Brahmana says, when we all know about Saptapadi, but we never hear that mantra very carefully. There the bridegroom says to the bride, Sakha Saptapada Bhava, Devraham Prithvitam, Retoham Reto Bhrutvam. May you be my companion. I am the heaven, you are the earth, I am the life force, that is Retas, the semen, and you are the bearer of that life force. So these references, and why these references occur? Because this particular relation was for reproduction, and that is also very much mentioned in the Rig Veda when it has been said, when the bridegroom shows his house to his wife when they are newly married on the very first, as soon as they are married, he shows the house, and that time he says, iha priyam prajayate samruddhyatam asmin gruhe garhapatyay jagruhi, that you be here for garhapatya dharma. And why, what is the garhapatya dharma? It is prajaya, that is you have to prosper here with children. And very rarely this one particular rite, nishek, in our wedding ceremony is known to people. That is the first union of the couple ritual. At that time, the mantra which is uttered is also Vishnur Yonim Kalpayatu. That it is found in Rigveda, Atharveda, Apastam Mantra, Brahman, etc. That yoni has to be prepared for the sake of union. So that element was very much there. And then there are folk elements also, and tantra. Three things come together, because to quote about the folk element in wedding and in this particular context, it has been said on the 5th day after the wedding, the newly married couple goes to a river, and they both catch, the bride and the bridegroom catch a fish, and they ask a brahmacharin, what do you see? And he has to answer progeny and prosperity. That we see, that the fish is the first uh, creation. So progeny and prosperity for both uh, the couple is to be there. Then other thing I thought that why the lotus is always shown there, because when we're talking in chakras, the kundalini passes through chakras in the subtle body, and those chakras are always shown in the form of lotuses. So maybe it may be having some connection. And you talked about Ananda Nayaki. So here also I want to say why this name Ananda Nayaki as particular, because as I earlier said that Upastha has the reproductive organ has Ananda as its Vishaya. And then about Avidhava you talked about, that was very interesting. But the last thing I want to say is that there may be this Lajja Gauri and its puja in some particular regions. Some particular tantras may be following it, but our Gruhya Sutras warn us. They say, Yasmin deshe ya acharo, Nyaya drushtastu kalpitaha, sa tasminneva kartavyo, Deshachara smruto bhrugoho. It says that in Gruhya Sutras, there or observances, samskaras, the customs are recommended for the practices for a particular region or a particular family, in addition to those which are prescribed in text. So not that that particular puja is there, everyone has to follow it. It is for a particular desha, and I will add, it is for a particular kala also. So this warning is very much given in our Guruya Sutras. With this, I want to conclude my concluding remarks, and I am very much once again thankful to you for your enlightening speech.
Thank you very much. Let me just comment on some of those things. Thanks once again for your input. The etymology name Lajagauri has been discussed in great detail by Dhere, and that actually is part of the book as well. But I should have given about 3 or 4 lectures on various topics related to Lajagauri. So that etymology that you suggested is very much a part of. There are many different ways of doing that, but in fact, it has been said. I have said that. If you look at that image, it should be Nirlajja Gauri, not Lajja Gauri, but because she's showing herself. So there are all kinds of interpretations, but they have been discussed in Dhere's book. So that's wonderful. The other thing, yes, since I'm a marriage celebrant and I have lots of weddings and I have to preach Sanskrit here as well. So I know the Atharvavedi reference to the what you said. I'm very much aware of. But once again, and lastly, I accept that there could be places where things are done. They could and the time when things are done. But the fact that these images were found all over India and especially in Maharashtra suggests that at some stage, things were different. That's all I can say. So I think if there are any other questions, I'm happy to. Yeah.
If there are any questions, we can take one or two. Uh, there is some message in the chat, sir. It is something like this. Uh, okay. So, are people mature enough to take these topics? That was one question. Are people mature enough to take these topics to understand these
Okay.
concepts? That was a
Thank
question
you.
that was there.
Yes, maturity depends very much on the education that you had. And the fact that Lajja the book Lajja was awarded many medals and prizes, including government of Maharashtra. It went through so many different editions and so on, does go to suggest that people did have the maturity. And when the book was originally published, there was no cry of obscenity and so on and so on. There were other cries, but not obscenity. So people obviously took it in the right way, the way it should have been. And besides, I think the main thing that people should look at is we are describing a natural phenomena in terms of godliness, not in obscene, horrible terms. So that's something entirely different, and that's something that people should take home.
There's another remark which says that the Christian missionaries may have erased most of these temples.
I doubt it very much. I mean, they may have, but Mahakut temple exists. I went there just a while ago, and 3 or 4 years ago, and the temple is quite intact. It's just that the image of Lajja Gauri that was in the sanctum somehow was taken out, and Christian missionaries may have done it, but missionaries didn't actually go into temples because British India said that religion is something that we have nothing to do with. You follow your religion and so on. They will try to convert you, but Christian missionaries on the whole did not destroy religious things. They would convert you, yes. Unlike other religions, Islam, for instance, they were not iconoclasts.
Thank you, sir. So I thank you so much for the questions also and the interesting conversation there. And with this, we come to the end of this aspect. And thank you so much, Dr. Jayant Bapat, for putting forth this topic for all of us. And before we end, I would also like to thank uh, Shri Dilip Karambekar ji, the president of SSASP, the executive director Srimati Nilima Kadhe, Dr. Anjana Naigavkar, and many others who joined and in between as per their time, as time allowed, and also to the audience who has been very interested and listening to the whole conversation. And thank you to all those who are watching us from Facebook as well as YouTube. So while we come to the end, let me also take this opportunity to announce that we are having Dr. Ganesh Rao speaking to us tomorrow on the introduction to Ashtanga Yoga. And this session will be from 5 to 6. Please note that it will be from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. You continue to use the same Zoom link this time because it's not one of the normal times that we are following. It is from 5 to 6 p.m. So, Dr. Ganesh Rao, for those of us who are not acquainted, is the founder of ACT Yoga. He is the professor and PhD guide in yoga and philosophy from Kavi Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University as well as Mumbai University. So we look forward to listening to him tomorrow. I would also like to announce that SSASP has been permitted to be the center for MA Yoga Shastra and MA Sanskrit from Kavikula Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University. So people wishing to do MA in Sanskrit or in Yoga, admissions are open till the 30th of August, and the lectures will be, the contact lectures will be on Zoom, considering the current situation. The material will be uploaded on Zoom, and the practicals and other aspects also will be taken. So, those of us who are interested, either you or you would like to pass on this message to others, please do so, and you can contact us directly. The mails have been sent to most, but yet we will try and send as many possible. So we look forward to some of you who are interested in the topic in taking up these courses because they are open kind of learning, and you need just to be a graduate in any field. You can otherwise continue to take admission in either of the two, that is MA Sanskrit as well as MA Yoga Shastra. So we look forward to one tomorrow, the session with Dr. Ganesh Rao, also to meeting some of you who will take admissions for MA Sanskrit and Yoga Shastra and pursue their learning. So with this, we come to the end. I'm also grateful to Saptahik News Bharati, who are relaying these on their channels as well. And I'm also grateful to Sri Aurobindo Institute, that is Fundamental Education for Indian Culture, and in particular, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra. So with this, we come to the end, and thank you so much for being here. We see you tomorrow, same time, same place.